Welcome to Utah Stories. Thank you so much for joining me. Today on the program, I want to discuss how is it that we have a deep state local government here in Utah. And what I mean by deep state is unelected leaders who have enormous amounts of power. Why is that possible? Why did we make it possible? I'm the editor-publisher of Utah Stories. I've been doing this job for about 18 years now, if you include the online coverage we did when we started. Investigative journalism, asking tough questions, trying to find answers. That's what we do around here. I tried numerous times to interview here on the podcast. I've interviewed many of his colleagues, people in the homeless and housing services agencies. But this guy is the man in charge, appointed right after Governor Cox. His name is Wayne Niederhauser. And I've been very gracious with him. I actually saw him in person a few days ago. I finally was able to introduce myself to him. And he said he actually would answer questions. And then he said, but I need to have you talk to my PIO. And that PIO says he does not agree to an interview. I'm not going to assume that he's a bad person. I'm not going to attack him or anything. It's nothing personal. But he does not believe himself to be held accountable to voters. He simply does not believe that the constituents, if you want to call them that, the people he serves, he doesn't believe he needs to worry about them. And for that reason, I want to know why it is we don't elect these local leaders. Why is it their names are not on the ballots when we go to our local elections? I'm really curious. There's all these names of judges who I've never heard of. There's a county assessor. Don't even know what that person really does. There's a county treasurer, there's city council members, there's mayors, but the homeless services director for the state of Utah has arguably more power than any city council member by far. And you could even argue the only person who has more power than this person in this position is our governor. And so why don't we elect this person? Why does this person not feel accountable to the people who are actually paying their salary and contributing the money through our tax-paying dollars? If you know the answer, I'd love to hear it, because I have not been able to find anybody who can give me the answer. But just a rundown of the people we've had on the program who surround this person. We've had on Steve Waldrop, who is the housing czar. He's probably the next most important person to Wayne Niederhauser in power in controlling housing. We've had on Salt Lake District Attorney Sim Gill, who controls and arguably decides who is being convicted of crimes and what criminal behavior looks like, what type of criminal behavior the city wants to crack down on. We've been able to have on the program numerous political advocates, from Soren Simonson, who's the Jordan River Commission director. We've had on excellent guests such as James Buchanan from Solutions Utah when he came on to talk about the homeless industrial complex, how people are really getting rich off these homeless services positions. And we've had on Scott Howell, who's the director of Solutions Utah, served many years in the Senate for the state of Utah. And, a lot of wonderful people talking about how and why the homeless problem is getting worse here in Salt Lake City, not better, despite this enormous amount of funding we've given this program. We've also discussed a lot about the housing first model, how simply giving people apartments for their housing and expecting them to then get better from their mental illnesses and get off of the controlled substances they might be on has completely failed here in Salt Lake City. We have 3 inside sources at a place called the Magnolia Apartments, and they all say it is absolutely terrible there. Body bags are going out on a weekly basis of the tenants there who are dying from drug overdoses. But the person in charge does not want to speak with us, Wayne Niederhauser. And so I want to know if Governor Cox could answer, is he even really accountable to the Governor Cox? I did not hear that he was actually appointed by Governor Cox. Now, this is conjecture and rumor. I don't know if it's true. But I heard he appointed himself as with the position because he had seniority. He was a Senate president for, I believe it was 2 or 3 years. And I just don't understand why our government would operate in a manner like this when we're putting so many millions of dollars into housing homeless people, and it's failing so miserably. And they don't want to discuss, for example, there's a property on North Temple and Redwood Road called the Ramada Inn. We've discussed this quite a bit. That property is about, I believe, 7 acres set aside for homeless housing. And that property sat vacant for many, many years. It was the overflow shelter for the homeless for a number of years. And then it was supposed to be developed by a guy by the name of Ken Walburton. This guy had the funding given to him by Wayne Niederhauser's office, as well as a grant given to him by the Salt Lake City Council. And he was trying to obtain building permits for months and months. The mayor actually kept insisting this was a project in the works of happening. But according to the accounting and finance person for Walburton, I hope I'm saying his name correctly, he was never able to get his permits to properly start the project. Why was this? Why then did the Miller family, the Gail Miller and her sons, end up swooping in and buying up this property? Why was that allowed? Why did the governor's son and his development group buy up the former property of the road home and develop their own big, massive property on much-needed homeless housing real estate in downtown Salt Lake City? These are just basic questions I have. They're not really complicated. It's just trying to understand why things are the way they are in Salt Lake City, why the homeless people we interview constantly tell us they literally have no place to go, no place to camp where they're safe. If the overflow shelters are full, they really don't have any place other than the streets to camp out. I think that's a shame, and luckily there's been organizations such as the Second South Coalition and First United Methodist Church, Wendy Garvin's group, the Unsheltered Utah, who stepped up and opened up church buildings for homeless people to sleep in. And then there's organizations who don't receive a dime of taxpayer funding, such as the Other Side Academy, who are also actively solving and coming up with solutions to the homeless problem. And I just think that we are wasting millions upon millions of dollars with maybe there are some good outcomes, but we don't even know because we don't measure the outcomes. I listened to the governor give a speech in the springtime at a Solutions Utah conference saying we need to have teeth in legislation that strips away funding from nonprofit organizations that are failing in providing services that don't transform the lives of the recipients who are receiving those services. To me, that seems totally obvious. Absolutely, we should strip away funding, and we should stop using operators such as the road home when the operations in these facilities is absolutely failing. I've looked at Wendell Place Apartments, Palmer Court, like I mentioned earlier, the Magnolia Place Apartments, Grace Mary Manor, the shelters that the road home operates. None of them are successful. None of them are transforming the lives of the people who are staying there. Or if they are, I would love to hear those transformational stories, and I'd be happy to share them. But all I hear from the tenants who are staying there and the people who interact with those shelters is that they are miserable, they are clinical, they feel like they're being locked up, they don't want to stay there, the staff is not nice to them. Perhaps this is true, perhaps it is not. Perhaps these are the rumors of drug addicts who don't want to deal with staying in a facility where they are unable to use drugs. I don't really know for certain, but I would love to hear the side of the homeless director and hear what he has to say about it. So he is willing to talk to KSL News. He's willing to talk to the Deseret News, the Salt Lake Tribune, probably ABC4, Fox 13, but he's not willing to talk to Utah Stories. And what I pointed out to him is that all of those networks and newspapers serve an audience of primarily people over the age of 50 who are homeowners, who are the clients of the homeless services. They are not homeowners, and they are not usually over the age of 50, and they are our listeners. They are people listening and watching our program on YouTube and Instagram. We know that. And so why not serve the interests of your constituents and answer my questions, Wayne Niederhauser? I'd really like to know. Why don't you even just answer my questions delivered over email? I'd like to know. I'd like to know, what is your experience and what are you doing to solve the problem? And the reason why I bring this up now, and particularly now, and why I was pressing him for an interview this week, is because this is the cold time of year. This is when the homeless problem is especially exacerbated by the cold temperatures that are in Utah, and when we should especially be considering the gratitude, the thankfulness we have right around Thanksgiving of what we all are able to have here in Utah, this wonderful lifestyle, all of these beautiful, incredible mountains and outdoor destinations we all enjoy. It's time to give back, and give back in a meaningful way that actually impacts the lives of the people who are far less fortunate than we are. If you disagree with me, or if you have a comment, please leave it in the comments below. Please share this episode with a friend. I think this is one of the most important issues facing Utah, that we have these deep state organizations who are not held accountable to voters. We need to change this. That should be one major objective that was not brought up in the gubernatorial election that we recently had. If you disagree with me, also, please comment. I'd love to hear from you. And thank you so much for watching. I thank you, all of you who have become members. It's so awesome. We've gotten a really good wave of membership support. It's $5 a month to become a member. You really help support our coverage. You help us continue investigating these tough topics. So with that, thank you so much for watching. Check us out on Instagram. Become a follower on Instagram. We're up to almost 31,000 followers on that platform. YouTube, it's harder to get out to our followers, but the best way you can follow us for free is go out to utahstories.com, subscribe to our free digital newsletter, and or become a member. Thanks so much for watching.